Welcome to Northwest, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I'm Ariana Abel, today's worship associate. Reverend Kevin DeBeck will reflect on this month's Soul Matters theme of living with intention and what that could mean to UUs. Music will be provided by our choir director, Ken Hermanot, and our pianist, Alex Myers. Today's Zoom host is Kathy Henry. If you're having a Zoom problem, contact her by using the chat box below. In the chat box, you can also fill out the visitor form if you would like us to stay in touch with you. You are encouraged to add your pronouns on Zoom. Find the picture of yourself and at the top right, click the three dots and choose Rename. If you're on a phone, go to Participants and click your name. Our upcoming services include International Holocaust Memorial Day and What is Our Center? The daily choices we make reflect the values we hold as a community. There will be a congregational meeting today at noon. We need members there for a quorum so we can elect positions for our board governors and other things. Oh, and you will need to log out of this service and click the link in your email for that meeting. Non-members are welcome to attend. You just may not vote. The next board meeting is February 10th. All are welcome. Or you may just banter with the board after the church service February 13th to learn what was discussed in that meeting. 50% of our plate collection will go to the charity organization selected by the Social Justice Committee. And for January, that is the Southfield Emergency Needs Fund. Their goal is to help residents overcome personal hurdles to achieve a productive quality of life. If you miss a service, it can be seen on YouTube. The link can be found in our e-newsletter. There will be a free multi-generational sledding, fire, and hot drinks event at Valet Park on the Detroit riverfront, Sunday, February 6th after church. Contact Eva Leventer. There are 5 spots left to join Liz Buckner, a DIA docent, for a Zoom tour on Tuesday, February 15th, 7 p.m. It's of a fascinating new exhibition of women artists in Italy, 1500 to 1800. The cost is $20. Contact Sherry Smith. Those of you who know and love Joe Jenks, he's going to be performing a live virtual concert for us. He is an award-winning folk singer-songwriter. Join us via Zoom to lift our spirits in the midst of winter blahs, Friday, February 11th. The membership committee will be covering the cost, so it is free to you. But hey, we never turn down free will donations. The Fire of Commitment Capital campaign aimed to raise $150,000 to pay off the mortgage. Guess what? We met our goal. Now, we're still going to have needed improvements and maintenance issues, so if you haven't had a chance to pledge yet, you're still encouraged to do so. Thank you all so much.
Our chalice lighting this morning comes from the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage, and she says, "We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May it melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark us in a spirit of humility. May it ignite in us radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This is a chalice of audacious hope. This chalice shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals. My name is the Reverend Kevin DeBeck. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I welcome you all to worship this morning.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched virtually or metaphysically, healed and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it holy. The hymn is Love Will Guide Us.
We are the water protectors. Water is the first medicine Nokomis told me. We come from water. It nourishes us inside our mother's body, as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land. Spoil the water, poison the plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of the black snake, they foretold that it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom burns the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Take courage. I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. To stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged, the two-legged, the plants, the trees, the rivers, the lakes, the earth. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nokomis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life. And now the hymn is 153, I Woke This Morning.
Before I do my reading from Anne Lamott this morning, I just want to say I want to thank all of the music folks here this morning because it sounds incredible and it's wonderful to be able to hear live music in the sanctuary. And I hope for those of you who are watching online that you're getting the good vibe that I'm getting from hearing all of this. It feels very uplifting this morning. So my reading this morning is from writer Anne Lamott, and she says, "Oh my God, what if you wake up someday and you never got your memoir or your novel written? Or you didn't go swimming in warm pools and oceans all these years because your thighs were jiggly and you had a nice, big, comfortable tummy? Or you were just strung out on perfectionism and people-pleasing that you forgot to have a big, juicy, creative life? Or the imagination and radical silliness and staring off into space like when you were a kid? It's going to break your heart. Don't let this happen. Repent just means to change direction and not to be said by someone who is wagging their forefinger at you. Repentance is a blessing. Pick a new direction and aim for that. Shoot the moon." On this cold January morning, I picture us all gathered around a fire doing a study group. The topic today, to satisfy our soul searching, would be the word intersectionality. Intersectionality, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, states, and this is from them, the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Now, that's a lot of 50-cent words. Let me tell you what that really means. In plain speak, it says that instead of having a singular view for each of the ills of our modern society, it's looking at the whole picture to understand the common elements of oppression. They all intersect, such that when we are working on, say, gender justice, we are also lifting the tide of economic justice. Intersectionality does not say that they are the same, but that they have common enemies and common obstacles. I invite you to think of your own identities. For instance, some of my identities are I am a husband, father, minister, brother, son, white, male, cisgender, and the lists of privileges goes on from there. In your life or in these of people you love, think of the identities which provide privilege or are subject to repression, and then look at how they all intersect. In much of the work that we do as a liberal faith, understanding how intersectionality works is one key to moving our society and even our own congregation forward. When we understand the common experiences shared by differently oppressed groups of people, it helps us to prioritize and focus as to where our social justice efforts should be. We can choose more effectively which social justice cause we might support based on upcoming legislation or some kind of natural disaster that disproportionately affects minority groups, or where to give our money and efforts, because we know that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, certain phrases like that one from Dr. King has supported this idea of intersectionality even before the word existed or was in common use. I invite you to think about the meaningful words in your life. I think about Dr. King and lighter but still yet meaningful, the cliche that rising tides lifts all boats. In fact, I did a little bit of research of where that might have started, and apparently it was kind of attributed to John Kennedy, because him being from Massachusetts, he was very familiar with tides and boats and how all that works. Now, did he originate it? I'm not sure, but it's kind of pointed as him as the first to really use that phrase. Our faith calls us to be at the intersection of love and justice. This is where Unitarian Universalism built a program called Side with Love. Each year from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day to Valentine's Day, we observe 30 days of love. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Side with Love, it started as a rallying cry against Proposition 8 in California, which sought to end equal marriage there in 2008. After the shooting at the UU Church in Knoxville, Tennessee that same year, the Unitarian Universalist Association adopted that slogan in 2009. Now, of course, it started out as standing on the side of love, but at the 2017 General Assembly, the name was changed to just Side with Love, because the disability advocates helped us to see that in this context, the word standing was ableist, because not everybody can stand. Now, have you ever had to make a change to accommodate what had already been true for a while? Like naming an issue or removing a word that didn't work anymore. When my daughter came out as trans 4 years ago, my wife and I had to get used to a new name and new gender for our child. It took us a while to come to grips with who she was, but once we understood that is who she really was, the adjustments became easier. Change is always hard, and intention makes that change easier. While the 30 Days of Love happens every January, I don't always observe it with the same effort every year, but I like to remember that we have our bright yellowed, t-shirted love people helping us to live with intention, which of course is our Soul Matters theme for the month of January. Now, perhaps you've seen these as you watch marches and protests. They are the yellow banners and yellow t-shirts, and they've been involved from women's marches to marches for voting rights. If you watch any footage of any human rights protests, I'll guarantee you will see the yellow shirts and the yellow banners, and I even have a yellow stole that says "Side with Love" on it. I was lucky enough to hold the big yellow banner at the 50th anniversary of the March on Selma back in March of 2015. The mission statement of Side with Love reads, and this is from their website, "Side with Love is an interfaith public advocacy campaign promoting respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Side with Love confronts issues of exclusion, oppression, and violence based on identity. With the goal of creating beloved community, the campaign pursues social change through advocacy, public witness, and speaking out in solidarity with those whose lives are publicly demeaned. Our core issues of focus include, but are not limited to, LGBTQ equity, immigrant justice, racial justice, and intersectional movement building." That's the end of their mission statement. Now, you notice that our word of the morning, intersectional, was mentioned over the course of that phrase. And this year's focus is, again, back to their website, Side with Love's 4 intersectional justice priorities, with opportunities each week for communities and people of all ages to ground, grow, and act together for justice. We are in the time period right now, and I invite you to Google it now or later, 30 Days of Love, to know about a larger part of our faith, Side with Love. The focus for this week is reproductive, gender, and LGBTQIA+ justice. January is where we celebrate the legalization of abortion because of the case called Roe v. Wade, which was decided on January 22nd, 1973. There is nothing new under the sun, says the book of Ecclesiastes, and since the dawn of humankind there have been abortions. They are not new. There have always been methods and means for women to encourage fertility as well as end an unwanted pregnancy. If we do any reading or studying about other cultures and other times, we acknowledge that women who knew how to help other women have kept this human race alive. Whatever gender a person is, one way to help women is to not legislate their reproductive choices. And we all know that before 1973, women still had abortions. Wealthy white women were more likely to have access to safe abortions, where poor women and women of color were subject to people who didn't know what they were doing, which of course caused a lot of harm and a lot of death. In talking to some of my Michigan UU minister colleagues about this today being Reproductive Justice Sunday, it was mentioned that if the Supreme Court does what we are all afraid they might do and overturn Roe v. Wade to where it's no longer federally mandated, Michigan might become one of those states that will criminalize abortion again. Women who have the means and the opportunities will still get them, of course. The women who don't will be the ones who will suffer again. This is where the intersection of race, class, and gender cross. Side with Love's intersection of love and justice informs and supports Unitarian Universalist values. My own call to ministry, as well as the ministry and the mission of Northwest, call us to be that intersection whenever needed. Can you think of a time in your life in which your UU faith carried you through a rough time, or made you feel proud, or challenged you? 30 Days of Love asks us to be intentional about our social justice actions. A contemporary of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, Thich Nhat Hanh, who died this week at the age of 95, and I also want to point out that he and Martin Luther King Jr. were of the same age. We always think of Dr. King as this very young person, but he and Thich Nhat Hanh were literally about the same age. Of course, he was a Buddhist monk and a peace activist. One stated about being intentional by saying, and these are his words, "When I was in Vietnam, so many of our villages were being bombed. Along with my monastic brothers and sisters, I had to decide what to do. Should we continue to practice in our monasteries, or should we leave the meditation halls in order to help the people who are suffering under the bombs? After careful reflection, we decided to do both. to go out and to help people and to do so in mindfulness. We called it engaged Buddhism. Mindfulness must be engaged. Once there is seeing, there must be acting. We must be aware of the real problems of the world. Then, with mindfulness, we will know what to do and what not to do to be of help. The Reverend Dr. King, of course, knew this, and of course, Thich Nhat Hanh knew this. And when we allow ourselves to be filled with love and justice, we also know that when you see injustice, action must be taken. On that same minister conversation, it was mentioned that there are already plans to start a network of people who would be willing to take women to Illinois to get the care they need. I and we, of course, should keep an eye on this as it plays out, so if the unthinkable does happen, we'll need to figure out what kind of action that we should take. For example, we might be asked as a congregation to purchase and supply the so-called day after pill for women who might be in crisis. And when the time arises, we can all figure this out together. You may be asking yourself, how does women's reproductive rights intersect with LGBTQ rights? They intersect at the idea that government or those in power have the right to control what people do with their own bodies. It takes away the right to autonomy and to make choices that should be made between a person and their doctor or their own sense of self. Women getting the proper health care along with LGBTQ folks also save lives, and no one should have the right to get between them and their doctors. And I want to throw out there the anti-vaxxers who want to use this same argument as to why they're not getting vaccine. It doesn't hold water because they are not saving lives, they are just being selfish. In our liberal faith, not only do we respect the dignity and worth of every person, but we work for justice, which often includes legislative action. We often talk about our 7, hopefully someday 8 principles, but these principles are based on 6 sources. And one of these sources states that words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Our social justice work is baked into our UU DNA and is a huge part of our identity. The other themes that side with love have created to be discussed during this 30 Days of Love are hospitality and inclusion, educating for liberation, and restoration and reparations. My Unitarian Universalist teachings have taught me that we are the authors of our own salvation. We as humans have the brains to create these problems that hound us, and that we as humans have the brains and wisdom to solve these problems. In fact, the Reverend William Barber once said, "It's up to us now. No one else is going to save us. This is up to us now." What attracted me to Unitarian Universalism over 20 years ago was the fact that our faith is an active faith, one that believes in what you do is more important than what you say. Living with intention demands that we fight for justice in all forms and at any time of the year. I'm reminded of an incident that happened during my time as the interim minister at the Evanston, Illinois congregation. One of the things that my seminary likes to do is that between your 2nd and 3rd years, you have to create some kind of project that helps the congregation engage in an area that maybe they haven't really engaged in. So what I was trying to do was to create a religious foothold on the campus of Northwestern University. When the powers that be wouldn't allow me to go on campus to see if there were any UU students that could be ministered to, I contacted various student groups to gauge their level of interest. A couple got back to me, and when we had a sit-down chat at a downtown cafe, I asked them if they knew anything about Unitarian Universalism, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, you're the love people." While the campus ministry didn't get off the ground, clearly some of them knew who we were. Being the love people also requires us to act when injustice occurs. If we've learned anything from our prophets, both UU and non-UU, love is the only thing that will change life for the better, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Our closing hymn today is hymn number 168, One More Step. My closing words today are from Andrea Hawkins Camper, and she says, "May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be, for not us, who? If not now, when?" This is answering the cry of justice and the work of peace. Are called to do. This is the call we answer now, to be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. Amen and blessed be.